Welcome to Ask Caleffi, the podcast that dives into real-life problems that plumbing and HVAC technicians face in the field. We're your hosts from the Caleffi Tech Support Team. I'm Greg Tubbs.
And I'm Dan Furcus. Welcome. We look forward to sharing some stories from our tech calls and using our background and expertise to make your days a little easier.
Hey there, welcome back to the Ask Caleffi podcast. Today we're going to pick up where we kind of left off in a part 2 of this episode with Mark Eatherton, where we're going to discuss the issues that we find in domestic hot water recirc systems.
Well, and your technicians in the field, I'm sure, really appreciate the amount of upfront work that you do in investigating the projects before you're sending them in. They do. I can imagine being, being one of your service techs and going into a problem job and, being looked at like, it's a problem you created because not enough due diligence and preparation went in on the front end to make the corrections so that your project is successful.
Yeah, they stop you and they go, nobody else has ever asked me these questions before. Well, number one, they probably didn't know that they were supposed to be asking that questions because they're looking for a quote unquote problem.
Right. Sure.
And, their quick, easy fixes. Well, let's put in a bigger pump. That's not always the solution.
No. Seems to always be their first attempt, but not always the solution.
First attempt and the first thing to cause a problem down the road with erosion correction.
Sure, that's what they know how to do.
Yeah.
That's the easy fix in their eyes as well. Let's put a bigger pump on there and see what happens. And that's the problem, is they can't quote unquote see what's happening.
Sure. Right.
And, the complaints may subside a little bit, but the problems are still there. And the only way to address it correctly is to go through and thoroughly balance the system out, eliminate any cross connections, eliminate any backflow occurring within the system, and basically set it up so that it's going to work like it's supposed to.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of systems that aren't balanced at all, or definitely not balanced properly. But I also believe there's probably a lot of cross connections out there that aren't discovered.
Well, there is, and some of them were inadvertently set up. I had a call this last week from one of our manufacturer reps, and he says they've got a prison that they are unable to get hot water to their showers. He said all the showers in one place, and he said, but I think I may have discovered what it is, because he had attended one of the Caleffi seminars that I had spoken at.
Okay.
And he said they've got all of these mop sinks that have a chemical mixing station on them.
There it is.
Where the hot and the cold water come together to a common point, mixed down, goes through, picks up soap, goes into the bucket. And I said, are there check valves on the cold hot water supply? And he said, I don't think so. And I said, you just discovered your cross connection. Mm-hmm. I said, have them close at least the hot or the cold water valve on every one of those valves and see if hot water is restored at the showers. And I have not heard from him, so my assumption is, yep, that's where it was, and that took care of it, because if it hadn't, he'd have been calling me back going, well, no, that didn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the next thing? Out there.
Yeah. Well, we had an interesting tech call come in from a local project to us here in Wisconsin, and it was a hotel, and they have one of our Legiomix electronic mixing valves on site. And it's been working perfectly. They've had no hot water complaints or issues. And suddenly the contractor got a call of no hot water or low temperature hot water. And then the next day he got a call again, and they were determining what we were able to do, because our Legiomix has data logging.
Yeah.
It stores the temperature histories. We're able to walk him through that. And what we determined is it was occurring at 6 p.m. and it would occur for 2 hours, a 2-hour spread around 6 p.m. every day. And they determined that's when the maintenance crews were in there, or the cleaning crews were in there, and they were able to find a cross connection because of that. But the data logging feature in our Legiomix electronic mixing valve helped discover that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's where data loggers are indispensable. I mean, you can't be there every minute of every day, but if you leave a data logger there that takes a snapshot every minute, then you get a really good idea of what's going on, what the trends are. And then, as you said, listen, talk. What happens at 6 o'clock? Oh, the floor maintenance crews go in and start working in the hallways. Aha.
Yep. And that's what they did.
Related to that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But yeah, it's, there's not too much information that you can gather. And the more information you have, the more accurate you're going to be in going and making recommendations. I mean, we don't only recommend the use of the Series 116, we also use the quick flow setters. Mm-hmm. If you've got a split in the branch of the hot water supply main, then you're going to have a split in the branches coming back. And you want to make sure that you keep the water velocity within that pipe below an erosive velocity. And the only way that you can do that is to see literally what the gallons per minute movement is.
Sure.
So, Mark, what are your top 3 issues that you run into in the field?
Usually the top 3 complaints that we get are shortages of hot water that are time-based. And when you start looking at what's occurring as it pertains to the load and the source of supply, again, due diligence requires us to do a load calculation, not just for space heating, but also for domestic hot water. And in sizing the domestic hot water heating system, if the boiler is too small or the storage tank is too small or the shower heads are flowing at a rate that's excessive, then that will create a shortage of hot water during peak demand conditions. And it's usually quick to recover as long as people quit using hot water. But if the load calculations say you need 400,000 BTUs per hour and 120 gallons of storage, and you've got 200,000 BTUs and 80 gallons worth of storage, well, there's your problem staring you right in the face.
Right.
It's not a physical plant problem. It's a physical allocation problem. So you've got to do due diligence on that side first, see if the source is capable of generating the hot water necessary to handle the loads. As it pertains to loads vary by use. You get into an apartment complex where people are working regular jobs, peak demand is going to be between 6 and 8 a.m. in the morning, and then there will be another peak demand between 4 and 6 p.m. in the afternoon when they return. And then there's a little spike lunch when people are washing dishes. When you start looking at like senior housing facilities, there is no peak demand unless there's a bingo bus that night, in which case there will be a demand.
Right.
And in most cases, they're randomly using hot water throughout the day. They don't shower on a daily basis. They don't have to work up to go to work, so there is no 6 to 8 a.m. demand. But you have to look at the system as a whole, its use, make sure that you've got the necessary BTUs capacity plus the storage tank capacity, and that the shower heads are not excessive. I've seen shower head flow rates in excess of 6 gallons per minute in some of these old buildings. We're supposed to be at 2.5 gallons per minute.
Right.
So our recommendation at that point would be, number one, absolutely, as soon as possible, replace all of these high flow shower heads with a low flow shower head, and a lot of problems will go away. And a lot of problems that are associated with hot water shortages are usually addressed by somebody coming in and putting in a high flow rate or taking a restrictive orifice out of a shower head, which just compounds problem. Again, they're not looking at the problem as a whole. They're looking at that minutia problem within that unit itself and thinking, well, if I put in a bigger head, it'll bring in more hot water, the complaint should go away.
Oh, yeah, that'll create a complaint somewhere else down the line.
Yeah.
It does. It absolutely does.
Like the Dutch boy putting his finger in the dam.
Exactly. Yeah. The other complaint is the fluctuation of hot water, usually on the upper floors. And again, just through experience and having walked into the mechanical room and literally feeling the pipes under a demand condition, I can tell you whether that system's working correctly or not. Yeah. And if it's not, I know what the problem is. People look at a swing check and they go, well, it's a swing check. It's gravity closed. It should be working. Keyword should be.
Yeah.
In reality, if there's not an aquastat or a timer or something that stops that circulation return pump, that check, the swing check, is literally lined in the open position. Mm-hmm. So it can't activate. It can't close if it sees a backflow condition. So I like to avoid the use of swing checks whenever possible, but prefer to use spring checks whenever possible. But I've seen spring checks fail too.
Right.
Sure.
And the only way that you can diagnose that is with your hand or with an infrared camera or with a data logger, and you're feeling the pipes. If the circulation return pipe's coming back hot constantly, you've got a good flow. If it's fluctuating, you've got cold water running backwards through that circulation return. And even though the pump is on, that pump's only capable of generating so much pressure. And if the pressure differential is greater than what it's capable, it will run water through that pump backwards, even though the pump is in the on position. So that's the other complaint. And then the third complaint is not very common, but it's a royal pain to find, is that cross-connected valve.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as I've had people that were renting Hoover portable clothes washers that they put into their apartment. Well, if they want to do a warm water fill, they have to open the hot and the cold water that comes out of the spigot, and they give you a little adapter like you use for filling your water bed that basically allows you to make one hose connection to the washing machine itself. So you either get hot or cold or warm if you've got both open. Well, if you've got both valves open and the solenoid on the machine closes, you have a cross connection. Mm-hmm. And that cross connection can come and go. So it's pretty tough to track down. You have to ask that question of management. Do you allow portable washing machines in apartments? And if they say yes, then say, I think that's probably where the problem is. And the only real good solution would be to go in and install check valves on both the cold and the hot water supply going to that kitchen sink faucet itself. The cross-connected shower valve, we've already discussed, that's a pretty common issue.
Right.
But there's also a situation where in a lot of these senior elderly housing projects, that they will give the resident a remote wand so that they don't have to stand, they can sit in a wheelchair and take a shower in a roll-on shower.
Okay.
So again, if they close that valve that's on the remote shower head, but they don't close the hot and cold water supply going to that device, and there are not check valves on either the hot or the cold water supply going into that shower valve, you have a cross connection. And again, it can come and go. So in those situations, it becomes an education process. You have to educate management, to educate the residents that they never, ever want to use that little remote button on the wand to turn it off. Use the shower valve to turn it off. Mm-hmm. And then the problems go away.
Provided they do that.
Provided they do that.
That's the other struggle.
For the time being.
Yeah. Right.
And residents change. We use a lot of non-electric thermostatic radiator valves. That requires education. Number one, it's got from 0 to 5 on the number. They don't know what that means. They're used to looking at degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
So we have to tell them 3.5 is equivalent to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Set it and forget it. Mm-hmm. Do not touch it.
Right.
And after we get done educating them, everybody works great. Until a new resident comes in that doesn't understand what it is or how it works. And I'm the first person to complain when it gets a little cool outside. Hey, there's no heat coming out of my baseboard. The last place I lived in, I could turn it up on the 4th of July and it would vomit heat all over my body.
Right.
Well, you're in a different scenario here. Our boiler changes its temperature based on the temperature outside. And that thermostatic radiator valve should be set for a maximum allowable temperature. Set it and forget it. Right. Don't turn it up. Don't turn it down. Set it and forget it.
Yep. Yeah, that's the beauty
so now we've got management trained that anytime they have a new resident coming in, that they hand them this letter of instructions that explains to them how they're supposed to operate their heating system. And then, again, the complaints go away.
Yep. Yeah, that's the beauty of outdoor reset in the boiler.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have a lot of good procedures in place on the front side to evaluate these buildings and a lot of due diligence that you do on the front end. And I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us.
Yeah, it's a huge help.
My pleasure. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do it. I'm within a year and a quarter of retirement. And when I retire, I will be working diligently in my CNC shop. I've got CNC routers and CNC lasers.
Okay.
And so I'll be getting away from the hydronics industry and getting into making cool, fun stuff.
Yeah, that sounds
awesome.
Fun.
That sounds like a blast.
Yeah. Well, we certainly appreciate
educate as many people as I possibly can before I leave. So anytime I get a chance to work with Caleffi, who is fantastic for doing this, I'll be glad to do it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. We appreciate your help with Coffee with Caleffi and you taking the time out of your day to join us here.
All right.
All right.
Well, gentlemen, have a good day. And if there's any way that I can help you or the industry, feel free to give me a call.
You also, thank you,
We
Mark.
certainly will. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in. If you ever need help,
please feel free to contact our tech support team anytime at techsupport.us@caleffi.com.
Or call us during our business hours at 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central Time at 414-238-2360.